Welcome to the second episode of the ML Muse podcast. We're extremely lucky to have with us Ankit Anand. Ankit has done a PhD from IIT Delhi in artificial intelligence and machine learning and is currently working as a research scientist at DeepMind Montreal. Thank you for coming, Ankit, and welcome.
Thanks, Ramneet, to be here and connect with you guys and back to IIT Delhi. I feel grateful to you. to you.
So to start with, could you tell us briefly about how you became interested in this field, and had you been working on it during your undergraduate days as well?
So I think it is an interesting story. I had not worked in AI during my undergrad days at Punjab Engineering College. I took a course, but nothing more than that. And then I went to ISC and for my masters. And there I took multiple courses there. ISC, my program was in computational science. So it was quite maths heavy in the sense that it has numerical linear algebra, it has numerical methods, and I took game theory. So I took a number of maths heavy courses there. I got interested in mathematical and discrete computer science side of things. And then I thought I will do a PhD in theoretical computer science. So my focus was to do a PhD in theoretical computer science, and I applied to IIT Delhi and Kanpur. And then I joined IIT Delhi, planning to work with Naveen and Amit there. And I took those courses, and I was not even aware of Mosam had not joined at that time IIT Delhi department. Parag was there. So I had a chat with Parag, and I took a few courses, because we have to cover a few other courses as well in the breadth of the things. Like when we joined PhD, we have to take some other courses from other disciplines as well, even if I'm working in theoretical computer science. So I took probabilistic graphical models and machine learning at that time during my coursework. So at that point, then I thought I was working with Naveen for my first year, and then I thought it is theoretical computer science. I felt honestly to be much more harder, in the sense that you need much more patience on your side, that the results will come, and it can come in a click or it cannot come for a while. So I thought AI and this PGM stuff is a good balance. It has some algorithmic components with it, and also you can do some implementations, and also it is connected to the real world. Parag was there. I was extremely I felt like our frequencies match in style of working. So I started working with Parag and Naveen initially, and then the Mosam joined, and he joined our meetings. And then because we were doing a lot of system oriented work as well, the AI is not only about the proofs and all that. So then it became more clear that Mosam and Parag should be my advisors in that manner, and Naveen switched to my my research committee supervisor. So I think we did an internal shuffle there. But then overall after that it was interesting ride. So it didn't start from the AI to start with, but definitely my background in theoretical computer science also helped me to get started and to do well in AI courses.
Right. That's quite an interesting story. So one thing that we wanted to ask was, before you did your MTech, you were working at Samsung for about a year. So how did you make the decision to leave that job and then go into postgraduate?
I think so. Partly, so the placements from Punjab Engineering College were also pretty good, but fortunately or unfortunately, it was the recession time when I graduated. 2009 and 2010 batch were a bit impacted. So could not get the dream job what I wanted. But I went into Samsung, which was quite a decent place. But it was software development, directly software development sort of profile. I spent there a few months, and in the meantime I realized that I do not want to spend my whole life in software development. I need to do something else. And then I had given a gate a year before, in my during my undergrad final year. So I had my gate score valid at that time, and then I thought let's apply to all places, and I applied to ISC. And when I visited ISC, I had not heard about much about like the ISC campus and the ISC life. But then when I visited there for the interview, that quite changed a lot of my perception, like the research environment there and those things actually like means impacted a lot, like how people dealt with even in during the interview process. That was quite interesting. So I decided like that I want to go there for doing my master's.
Right. Uh, so so now we wanted to speak a little bit about the work that you did during your PhD here. So in your thesis, you propose the idea of symmetry-aware AI, and you use it to improve the efficiency and scalability of different algorithms. So can you tell us a little bit about that idea and how you used it?
Sure. I'm glad that you have gone through the thesis a bit. Like, thanks for that. So the basic idea, what our hypothesis is that in the real world, there are a lot of symmetries and invariances we encounter daily in life. So there are like different situations. Like each situation is different, but definitely there are a lot of situations where you encounter similar or more or less similar situations every day, again and again, with some modifications. So, and what we saw was like that a lot of the AI methods what we are developing, they are not symmetry aware. They are not exploiting this redundancy and this repetition and these invariances directly. So then we focused on like developing these methods which can use symmetry, which where we can define. So the first task was basically to how to define this symmetry properly. So we took like on in two different AI problems, especially one is AI planning, where you are given a task and you have to take a sequence of decisions to achieve that goal. So that also overlaps a bit with the reinforcement learning, when the model is not known to you, when the world is not known to you. So so in the AI planning task, where you have to take a sequence of decisions to plan your goal, or something you want to achieve, like you want to maximize your reward, there we are applied. And even like these planning methods and the methods we use there are like very much the foundation of the AlphaGo system as well, which played Go. Like we use Monte Carlo tree search method, which is used for AI planning, and we incorporated symmetries there. And the other area where we defined was symmetries were in the context of probabilistic graphical models. So probabilistic graphical models were like developed around, I think, 2000, like much more than around in 2000s. Like the 2011 Turing Award was given to Julia Pearl, who developed Bayesian networks. But like so, the idea of the probabilistic graphical models is to quantify the uncertainty as well as the structure in the real world. So the graph part captures the structure, like how and where the things are related, like where two entities like are related, and how the we can quantify the uncertainty between them. So we defined symmetries in the probabilistic graphical models as well. And these probabilistic graphical models, to give you a much more real world application, they are used a lot in like image segmentation, in computer vision, where you want to classify which pixel is which, like you want to say label each pixel in the image with a particular object. And you want to use these ideas that the neighboring pixels should belong to a same object, that there is stereo, like spatial coherence in the image. And they're also used in natural language processing as well, that where the different words should occur with the same probability, with a fixed probability. So there also they were applied. And the inference, like the methods which are used for solving these probabilistic graphical models are very, very computationally intensive. Like that's what we call the technical term inference for that. And by using these symmetries for the real world problems, we were able to speed up these methods quite efficiently. Like the inference task becomes much faster, because there is a lot of redundancy in the domain as such, which can be exploited. Just to give like more insight on like on a example, if you think like there is a on the table, we have placed a bottle, uh, means, and we want to segment like the different parts of the bottle in an image. Now the left part of the image, which is having a wall, and the right part of the image, although they are quite far, but they are similar. They are going to be classified as wall. They have the coherence. They have this coherence, like that the left and right parts are similar. Once you identify that, you can reduce this image or the number of pixels you want to classify to a very smaller number, which can be done much more efficiently. So that is a very like rudimentary example I'm giving here to connect with the viewers. But what sort of the work we did.
Right. So now is a very grueling and tough task. So what were some of your experiences? How was your experience doing a PhD here at IIT Delhi?
I think, yeah, definitely PhD is a long-term journey, and compared to bachelor's and master's, where you just pass the courses, you keep on going with the courses, and the courses will go away at one day. Like whether you score good or bad, that is a different story. But the courses will end in 6 months. That is how a PhD is different from the coursework. If you are focusing on a problem, that problem may be solved in 6 months. That problem may not be solved in like 4 years. So in that way, like it requires a lot of like focus, patience, and a different kind of temperament, I will say. It's like a lot of mental journey as well, like as it is like a learning or like the scholarly journey. It's also a mental journey that you have to like pass through different stages. But like uh, fortunately, I'm very grateful to have advisors as Mosam and Parag. They were very, very supportive. I think like they have got a lot of like the culture from their advisors where they studied in the West, and they have brought that culture to the IIT Delhi. So that helped. Like it was more of like, so they had an advisor student relationship, which is like always hierarchical by default, but they made it pretty easy as a friendly relationship where I can discuss and I can point out any issues. And like they were very, very cooperative throughout the journey. They are definitely very ambitious, and I am also grateful to that they strived some of those things within me as well. But like at the same time, they want to target big goals, but at the same time, the relationship between the students and them was quite friendly. That you can share. There was a good communication at each and every point. On there was good technical discussions where like I can put my point clearly, and there was no hierarchy as such that they impose their viewpoint on me, or like they impose what I want to do, like what they want me to do on me. So that way, I think it was really, really helpful. And yeah, overall, like on the other side of the mental journey, I was lucky to have some great friends at IIT Delhi, and we explored multiple hobbies during that time. You also get a lot of like free time as well. So I think it was overall, I was quite happy with my decision to do at IIT Delhi, like in the hindsight as well, that and things turned out pretty well. So yeah, I'm grateful to the people who supported me, like my friends, my advisors throughout that journey.
Right, that's wonderful to hear. So after your PhD, you're now working at DeepMind Montreal, and DeepMind, of course, has been leading the field of reinforcement learning. They introduced deep reinforcement learning, which is one of the biggest breakthroughs, and were also acquired by Google after that. How has your experience been working at DeepMind?
Yeah, definitely. DeepMind is like one of the top research organizations in the field of AI today. And till now, like my experience, I'm based in a Montreal team, and I am I report to Doina Prekup, who is also like a big pioneer in reinforcement learning and hierarchical reinforcement learning. She's a professor at McGill, and like she manages a team of DeepMind Montreal here. So I'm quite happy with the decisions I made, and like the people I work with around here. So one thing which we get is like we can choose to like work on ambitious problems. Uh, and the people here are like pretty humble, down to earth. That is like, so on the outside it may sometimes, even I used to feel that DeepMind is very big thing and there are very, very big stalwarts there. How I will manage, I means so I there was some sort of like fear as well, that how I will do there. But overall, the people have been really cooperative. Like they integrate you. Like I gelled with the team really well, and overall the journey has been going pretty well. And on the technical side as well, it's a research organization, so it's a big advantage that you do the kind of work like what you do in academia. You have the choice to work on a product if you want, but you are given free independence in most of the respects, to choose a problem, to propose an idea, and it's more like an academic organization as well. But at the same time, quite focused on achieving big goals as well, which they have like demonstrated in the past few years. I think consistently.
Mhm. So you mentioned that this is quite similar to academia, where you can propose a problem and then carry out research. So you experienced research here at IIT Delhi and in India generally also. And how would you compare the research experience that you're having there to what you experienced in India?
So there are, I think there are couple of differences. So one thing is that like when I started PhD, I was the first student of Mausam and Parag to graduate in India. So like we were the people who started this research group at IIT Delhi. So there were no seniors to look to, like who have passed out from their advising or from this research group. So we had to, and like we were 6 to 7 people initially, and a lot of us were working on different problems, so there are not enough people at our time, I will say, like to start and to start a good research discussion, or like to carry a reading group uh, consistently. So those things we suffered, like that we were a few people. But I think this situation is changing there. While at contrast at DeepMind, like you find roughly 1,000 researchers who are working on AI. So, and you can find an expert pretty much in house for everything, whatever you want. So that sort of thing is different. So, like in my experience, but I think those things will change as the research group will grow in India, and like the situations are changing, even across the other IITs as well. I'm seeing. The other thing is that in a PhD, you are much focused on a single, like you have like this 4 to 5 year journey in mind as well, that you want to end up, like you want to publish, and you want to like make sure that you get through like all this. You can take up an ambitious problem, but you can't spend too much time on that as well. Like you can't take up like a 4 to 5 year project directly, and if that fails, then yeah, your PhD becomes in jeopardy, and like all those things happen. But here, I think the DeepMind has one thing where the DeepMind stands out from like the other organization, is that they are ambitious to take up like big challenges, and like with the protein folding they did recently with AlphaGo. So they are happy to invest in those challenges to build artificial general intelligence. So they're ambitious. Like it's not the difference between the academic culture and here is that they are like you can spend a lot more time on a particular project than you would do in probably in academia. And obviously with the kind of the amazing research engineers Google and DeepMind has, and the kind of infrastructure they provide, that is also quite helpful. Like in the academia you have to build the infrastructure yourself, like the supporting scripts whatever we write, like that also take a lot of time. But here you also get a support of a lot of research engineers, and those are pretty amazing research engineers we work with. So that is also fortunate. And plus I think the compute, everyone knows that like we have access to like the much more compute than academia, which I feel we a lot of organizations are also sharing with the academia with the multiple grants and all those things, which I think yeah, the academia is at disadvantage. But I think like it's a bit yeah, different culture. And yeah, I think both the methods, like if even though we have compute, but yeah, we should not be using developing methods only which use compute. So I think, but that is like one unfair, or whatever you say, unfair advantage we have, which is how it is different.
Right. So this is one of the questions that I was most excited to ask. You have been working on cutting edge research and technology in this field for quite some time now. What is Can you tell us about one recent development or breakthrough that excites you the most?
I think yeah. So one of the recent, the big breakthroughs, like I see, like there are a lot of breakthroughs in the last 10 years in AI. But one thing which stands out for me was like this protein folding development. I think with the AlphaFold system, I was not part of that team at the DeepMind, but actually it is quite an inspiration for many of the people and for many of the other research organizations as well, that we can solve like a quite 20, 30, 40-year-old challenges in the fundamental sciences by the use of the technologies we are developing. So that way, I think like I was quite impressed with what the protein folding team achieved. And like they were quite focused like for the last 4 years. They were like, so the result came now, but like in the last year, but they were working on that problem from 2016. So it requires that kind of dedication to strive for that. And then they won that competition. And then even like after winning the competition, they won the competition in 2018, and they had beaten the like in second term in the protein folding competition, which is called CASP, by a big margin. But in spite of that, their goal was not to win the competition, but to solve the problem. So they then also worked the next 2 years where they actually like had thrown away the methods what they developed for the 2018 challenge, and they brainstormed to come up with the new methods which are even much more better, which achieve like the whatever metrics they have, this GDT metric of more than 90, which essentially these biologists say essentially solves the problem. So I think that was a big development where the AI's connection starts getting built to fundamental sciences, and like it's not entirely an engineering discipline, but it also connects well and augurs well for the fundamental sciences. That was a big thing for me, like from the scientific point of view.
This connection that you're speaking about of AI feeding into the fundamental sciences, you also talk a little bit about this in your thesis, where you say that these ideas of symmetries and invariance you've picked up from physics and mathematics. So can you talk a little bit about the give and take between the AI and fundamental sciences?
So I think a lot of methods, a lot of even AI researchers, like if you see the stalwarts like the Christopher Bishop and some big people who worked in AI, they come from physics background. So they were like actually means physics researchers, and they ventured into AI. So I think it has definitely a big connection, that the AI can be made more efficient, and like this what we call artificial general intelligence will be made more efficient by taking inspirations from the other methods. And I think AI is a multi like discipline field. We always take inspirations. There is a neuroscience team at DeepMind, so there is always inspiration from the neuroscience. There is there are people applying this problem for drug discovery, and like finding the molecules, like because like right now, like how the chemistry experiments used to be done was like that the people will think about, okay, they can do like 5,000 experiments, but they don't have the resources to do 5,000 experiments. And they will see, okay, this experiment is most promising, and we should try this first, and then that, and then that. Like it's lot experimental in a lot of other, like in the chemistry and other fundamental science. So now the AI can guide that process, because we are sitting on a bunch of data, on a lot of knowledge which humanity has built. So I think AI can be quite an inspiration in that. And interestingly, yeah, I would like to mention at this point that I'm also quite interested in, and I'm working right now on using AI for mathematics. I think AI can have a big role in developing the next generation of mathematics as well. Because what we think is like, if AI can learn to play a chess game against like the best chess player and thinks about the moves, what chess moves have to be made, why can't it be used to prove theorems and solve mathematics? So I'm working right now on DeepMind on that problem. It is pretty challenging using AI for theorem proving and those things, but I think it's an exciting challenge. Yeah. So I think the connections with the fundamental sciences, mathematics, it's quite inherent, and like the AI will make these developments much more fast as we see. And I think I look forward to those days much more right now in the future.
Right. So that's actually a very exciting problem that you're working on. So with this, we come to our last question for you today. What would be your advice to undergraduates who are starting out in research and want to pursue a career in this field?
So one thing, so couple of things I say to people, or like what I benefited from is like that take take a lot of courses and build the fundamentals. So you will, this is the time, the undergrad and your master's time, when you're taking the courses, you are going through the courses in rigor and you are studying the history. At Utilize this time, uh, do your courses properly, so that your fundamentals are much more stronger, because as you go into the research, you will work on like a much more narrower field, or like you will not get a very broad picture, like until unless you become a very big researcher. Like for the next few years, like in the young researchers time, you will be following a narrower picture of your research trajectory. So you may not be able to get a bigger picture, but you can create bigger connections properly, and you have built your fundamentals uh, more strongly. And all these are like, these things are really really useful, like the linear algebra, I will say optimization. I see a lot of people I have not taken are not taking recently these courses, because a lot of packages are already available where you don't need to necessarily know the optimization, or you don't need to necessarily know the linear algebra or the differentiation with the PyTorch and TensorFlow, everything coming. Like obviously it is for our easy for making the research fast, but at the same time, to develop something fundamental, I think you need to stress a lot on the basic courses, and utilize that time in the undergrad. At the same time, I think the third or fourth year of I think there are some, like there are all the faculty at the IIT Delhi and like the elsewhere are pretty great. So spend some time on research. Try to, like I'm not saying research is everyone's cup of tea, but like it's a good time to spend some time on research in like your third or fourth year, so that you get a taste of it. And I actually I enjoyed working with undergrads. I worked with like three or four amazing undergrads at IIT Delhi. Like during my PhD, I should name them, like Aditya Grover, Ritesh Luthigatu, Harun Habib, Gagan Madan. So these people were like, so we worked in projects, and like they had like a year or so. But I'm really grateful for, like I also learned a lot from them, and I'm sure like it was like a coherent exchange of information, and I keep good friendships with them. So I think that time period you should utilize, like your third or fourth year, to get a taste of research. And probably like the internships are also a great start. So like two messages, like one, take courses, build fundamentals, that is very important, like in your first 2-3 years. And get a taste of research in the third or fourth year, work with some PhD student or like a professor, and you will get to know much more about the research, and it will help you in your research journey afterwards, when you are applying for PhD or when you are going through the PhD at that time.
Right. So I think that completes the episode this time. Thank you so much, Ankit, for giving us your time and giving us the opportunity to learn.
Thank you, Ramneet. I'm glad that I was not I think I didn't meet any one of you like when I was there, but I'm lucky that you invited me, and to connect with you guys. Hope to stay in touch through other means, and good luck for your future endeavors. And yeah, stay safe.